Well, hey guys, welcome to the Dreams Guy podcast. My name is Jon Thomas and I'm the Dreams Guy. We are here with another dreamer. Actually, one of our dreamers was telling me about her son having a really cool dream. So we asked him to come in. So this is Chow. Hey, welcome to the Dreams Guy. Glad you're here. All right, so I was going to ask you about how long ago did you have this dream?
December 8th, 2021.
December 8th, 2021. So that's just a couple months before we're filming this. So it wasn't too long ago. Mm-hmm. All right, so tell me about your dream.
Well, it's about radiation.
Okay. So what did you see? What was your dream?
Well, first I was in a... Have you heard of Star Wars?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was in a Star Wars crate. The crate could hover. Inside the crate was a radiation bomb. Then I was with some Imperial officers who were in a Star Wars type golf cart. Someone's phone started ringing, and the guy who was driving told everybody to check their phones. And the last guy to check his phone was the one whose phone was ringing. His phone said, "I'm here." Then there were a bunch of TIE fighters outside and Star Destroyers. Then I was on a random planet, and a bunch of our family members were there, mostly Dad's side of the family. I showed everyone that I got the radiation bomb. It was black, and it was shaped like our carbon dioxide fizzy drink dispenser.
Okay, yeah.
Like a little container that's like this big.
Yeah, we've got one of those in our kitchen. Okay.
And there was a rocket that was only a couple feet long that the radiation bomb would fit in. I put it in the rocket and said, "Who's going to drive?" And the people around me said no one was going to drive. And I was like, okay. And everyone was in a huge basketball court. Really big. There were my cousins, people from jiu-jitsu. I do martial arts. And lots of people. Everyone was throwing dodgeballs at each other. Cousins were playing basketball. They had a regular-sized basketball, and there was a large yoga ball that was painted like a basketball. Then James kicked it, and it went across the room and hit a vent that was hanging from the ceiling.
And James is your cousin.
And James is my cousin. Okay. So it made it hard to throw it at people. Then I got a really good grip, and I was waiting for the perfect time to throw.
The dodgeballs were slippery.
Yeah.
That's why it made it hard.
But then everyone froze, and the whole room was a blur. And everything froze. Yes. Mm-hmm. You could still talk, but no one moved. You could turn your head and move your arms, but your legs were frozen. But no one moved at all. It was like I knew I could move, but nobody else knew that they could move. Cousins were at a table, and I threw the dodgeball right in between their heads, like right in between them. And they were shocked because they didn't expect that. And I laughed, and Dad laughed. Then everyone was back outside. There was a pool shaped like ours that had no water in it, but it was filled with compost. We took over half the compost and stuck it inside the bomb, and suddenly the rocket was like a regular sized rocket. It was really big. And I said again, "Who's driving?" And someone said one of his cousins were going to drive.
One of your cousins.
One of my cousins was going to drive, but I had never met this cousin. And later on, the rocket took off. It went into space. Then we went back into our house, and our house was next to the launch site. It wasn't the house we live in now. It was like a rectangle. It was like one of those houses that sometimes semis pull.
Okay, yeah.
And the launch site. It wasn't the house we live in now. It was like a rectangle. Then Elsie said, "All right, let's go," because she was afraid of the radiation. Then some guy who was Dad, but not looking like Dad, was walking and eating a cookie. Then he stopped eating the cookie and dropped it. And I said, "What's going on? And why did you drop your cookie?" The radiation was different than most radiations. It was, if it got worse enough, there was yellow stuff that it was like, what is it called?
The stuff that goes in ceilings. The
Um,
yellow.
Insulation?
Yeah, insulation.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
insulation, and if the radiation got bad enough, the insulation would just expand. And where he saw the insulation-looking radiation stuff was on a streetlight. And then soon everywhere in the world had this radiation. There was some place in Japan, and my dad works for a Japanese company called Kubota, where there was a guy who seemed really mad because the radiation took his voice. It could take people's voices too, which I had not known that until then. Then he stormed inside his house, and in the doorway was a big puddle. He walked through the puddle into his house, and a couple of minutes later, he came out. There were two guys. One had a rifle, and one had a pistol. They were old guns, not like the ones we have now. And they started shooting everyone. Then they left. Then we were as a family back in our backyard. It was a beautiful backyard. So through our back door was another town. It looked like, it reminded me of the town we used to live in Austin.
Okay.
It reminded you of our neighborhood, right?
Yeah, our neighborhood. And in that backyard, it had no effects at all. No radiation. So in our front yard, it looked like a hurricane had just gone through. Everything was abandoned, and streets were they were disgusting and stuff. And so in our backyard was just perfectly normal.
Okay.
And there was this lady that we saw. She's the lady that would check us in at Arrow. Arrow is the school I go to. And she was there, and Mom said, does this town not have any radiation? And she said, our houses and cars are especially made. The lady from Arrow said, our cars and houses are especially made to not get radiation. And then we went on the sidewalk beside her house. Half the sidewalk was clean, and the other half in the roads as we got clean, and the other half in the roads as we got closer to the village. At the front of the house, which was abandoned, was covered in compost. We lived in the place that had all the radiation. We went back into the no radiation village, and you could see that some of the cars were getting a little bit rusty because of the radiation. We asked a girl and said, it looks like you have some radiation. And she said, no, this happens every year, because apparently they would get a little bit of radiation every year. Oh, yeah, and there's a little fountain, but the water was brown. It wasn't very clean water.
And then no radiation.
Yeah. Then suddenly we were back at the rocket site. Our pool was there with less than half of the compost left in it. And I wondered if I would ever see the cousin that I had never seen before. And that's all.
Okay. The one that was flying the rocket.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a really long dream. There's lots of pieces to it. I'm going to see how much I can remember, and then we'll start talking about it. So it starts out, and you're in a Star Wars crate.
Yeah.
And you have this radiation bomb.
Yeah.
There's some other Imperial officers that are there, and you're talking about what you're going to do with this bomb. And I'm trying to think. So that's when the scene changes to where you're in the house. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out how to put it into a rocket, and it was going to send it off so it would explode, and nobody wanted to drive. Nobody wanted to drive the rocket. So all your family's around, mainly on your dad's side of the family, but nobody's like, no, nobody's going to drive this thing. And then scene changes, and you are looking at the house that you lived in, but it was the basketball court. Yeah, which was a really huge basketball court, and there was a lot of people, and there was even more people, and some people were playing basketball, and then some people were playing dodgeball, and there were different balls, and one of them was like this yoga ball that was painted like it was a basketball. It was kind of hard to throw, and then some of the dodgeballs were wet, and because they were wet, they were kind of hard to throw. but you were able to get a good grip on one of them. But before that happens, your cousin kicked the yoga ball and it hit something in the ceiling, and that made it hard. Did that make it? What did that do?
It was like
it hit like
vent.
a vent or something?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, but that didn't make anything happen. He just hit that.
Yeah.
And then you had it, and then everybody froze. Couldn't move their feet. They could still talk and kind of move their heads and look around, but couldn't move anything else. And everybody's like, well, what's going on? And then you're still able to throw the dodgeball. And you throw a dodgeball right between your two cousins' heads, like really close. Yeah. But doesn't hit them. And then you start laughing, your dad starts laughing, everybody thinks it's funny. And then it shifts back to this pool, kind of this pool area. And it kind of looks like the pool that you have at your house, but it's full of compost. And now there's this big rocket you're going to put the bomb into. And, who's going to drive the rocket? And then there's this cousin that you have, but you don't actually remember this cousin in waking life. But in the dream, they're your cousin. And they're like, well, they're going to drive it. And so they get into the rocket, and the rocket goes off into space. You see it go up, and then the rocket explodes, and there is radiation everywhere.
Well,
is that right?
The rocket doesn't really explode. It just goes up.
It just goes up.
Yeah.
And you put compost in the rocket
We
first,
put compost
right?
in the rocket first.
Compost and the bomb in the rocket. Okay. I missed the compost part. Okay. So that goes up. And then that's when you start seeing like radiation affecting everything. Yeah. It's causing all the insulation just kind of expand and get big. It's was it causing people to get sick?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Part, you said it took their voice.
Oh yeah, it took their voices.
That's and that's when you saw the Japanese guy, and he was really mad that he lost his voice. And he goes into his house, and when he goes into his house, there's a little puddle when he goes in the door. But then he comes back out, and there's two other guys with him, and they both got guns. One's got a rifle, one's got a pistol, but they look like old guns. Yeah. And they start shooting people, but they don't shoot you and your family. But then you and your family are back where you're from, back at your house, no longer in Japan. And that's when, let's see, don't you go out into the backyard and you realize that the backyard, there's this whole other town that's not affected by the radiation. Everything out front affected by the radiation. It looks like a hurricane went through or something. Yeah. But this back, and it kind of reminds you of the place that you lived when you were living in Austin. Yeah. Kind of that kind of look to it. And there's the lady that checks you in at the school that you go to, and she's there. And there was a question about like, how is this area is not affected by the radiation? There's kind of discussion like, well, this area is not affected by the radiation. There's something in the houses and the cars that makes them so they don't get affected. And you're walking around and you notice that your pool is only halfway full of compost now. Yeah. Where it was full at the beginning, but now it's only halfway full of compost. And you see compost in other places too, right? There was other places there. And it kind of looked like things were being affected by radiation. And you were thinking, oh no, the radiation is getting through. And you ask somebody about it. They're like, no, this just happens every year. Sometimes it's just a little bit of radiation happens and it goes away. This isn't because of that. This is something else. And that's basically the end of the dream.
There was a fountain that had brown water.
There's a fountain that had brown water.
And then, did you say that?
And then I wondered that if I would ever see that cousin who was driving a rocket.
That went up.
Daddy, he dropped the cookie because he saw radiation on a light post.
Okay. Yeah, so that it was your dad, but it didn't look like your dad. But you knew it was your dad. Yeah. And he was eating a cookie and he drops it because he sees the radiation. That's what started the whole conversation. What's going on? And that's where you start seeing that there is some radiation. You find out that it only happens once a year. Okay. So one of the things about dreams, just to kind of get into the basic point of a dream, is to figure out how you can think about it in a small, as short a way as possible. So if you take out all the details, right, there is radiation that affects everything but one area. Yeah. And your family's safe. So this whole thing's Star Wars. It's kind of fun because Imperial is usually the bad guys, right? but you're with the Imperial officers, so
But they didn't know I was there.
They didn't know you were there, so you overheard it. And that helps. I didn't know they didn't know you were there. That actually makes more sense because I was trying to figure out why you were with the Imperial officers. But the fact that they didn't know you were there, that makes a lot more sense. So you stole the bomb.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
That's cool. And the bomb just kind of makes everything go bad and fall apart. Yep. I think there's a way for you to look at it, how it's going to affect your life specifically. But in this dream, God's showing you something like a real big principle that's how things actually work. And so this bomb, radiation, it's something invisible that infects everything and causes things to go bad, right? So this, it's God showing you what happens when sin is in the world, right? When sin is in the world, it makes things fall apart. It makes things go bad. Like that was that radiation. You were trying to steal it from the enemy, like, because the enemy wanted to hurt people with it and you're trying to get it out. So you have this heart to help people and to protect people from the effect, but there's still, it's affecting things. And it's affecting the world around you. But there is a way to stay free from that effect. And that places that, like, that's people that have faith, right? That's that secret substance that's in the houses, that's in the cars, that keep them from the effects of that radiation. And so you're being shown that those people that stay true to that believe in God, right? That have a faith in God, that they're going to be protected from the effects of this thing that's going on. And so that's a general principle that's always true, right? But it also has some very specific meaning for your lifetime, because in your lifetime, you're going to notice more and more how much that is affecting the world around you. And it's going to become very clear the difference between people that are affected by that, and the people that aren't. But even the people that aren't, even people that know God, that believe in God, they still have to deal with some of the effects of sin, but it's not in the same way.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just cycles and it goes away and things get better. But there's the both and that you're recognizing. Now, compost is something that you put together because you want to help things grow.
Yeah.
Like you take all this stuff and it turns into like fertilizer so that things grow better. So it's in the midst of the bad that's going on, there's preparation for something new to grow, right? And, you made sure that even in the midst of, in this rocket that goes up, that while there's this bomb, there's also compost, which is a place for new life to happen. That's where plants come, where growth happens. So even in the midst of the bad, there's always good that gets mixed in with it. And there's always hope, even when things look bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have an interesting role in this dream, because in this dream, like you're playing dodgeball. We'll talk a little bit about what that might mean here in just a second. But you're trying to take care of this bomb. Like you're trying to get it out of the atmosphere. So you have a leadership call that's on your life. You have a leadership call to help people and to protect people when things are going bad. And you're going to see things that are happening, and God's going to give you solutions. And maybe it won't happen immediately because the first time you tried, it didn't work. But then later it worked. You were able to do something that got it out of the atmosphere. And so it's not always going to work the first time, but if you keep on trying and don't give up, it will work. Now, the basketball court is interesting, because basketball court is where you play, so you're having fun. Like there's games going on, there's things that are going on. But both of the games that you saw, they both require teams. All right, basketball, you've got your teams. Dodgeball, you've got your teams. And you know, the both of them were trying to have fun, but you learn how to work with other people in a team. I'm trying to figure out why everybody froze. Like in the dream, I don't remember anything that happened that's like, well, this is why they froze, but they just froze. So what would that mean? Well, if you freeze, you can't do what you were doing before.
Yeah.
That's one thing. So it's like people just doing what they were doing and then not able to do that anymore. But you were still free. Was it scary when everybody froze? Or was it just...
Everybody just froze. It was kind of shocking. I was like, what just happened?
Yeah. So it wasn't that it was scary. It was just, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm not sure what that part means. But I find it kind of fun that even in the midst of that, you still threw the ball and got everybody laughing.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty cool, which that says a lot about your personality.
He likes to make people laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. When things are difficult and nobody knows what's happening, you're still going to find a way to make people laugh and bring joy into the situation, which is really cool. That's a neat gift that you have. Yeah. So any questions?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
How come the front of the house? Well, okay. Is there significance to the back of the house? Like he said, it seemed like our old neighborhood.
Yeah, there's probably something about the faith that he got when you guys were living in Austin.
Okay.
There's probably some connection.
He grew up there, lived.
Yeah.
Like I think we moved here when you were 7. They grew up in the church there.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
You grew up in going to one chapel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that where you met Jesus?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what that would represent. That's why it was that neighborhood.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is a really cool dream.
That is a really cool dream. It's really fun.
That makes sense, everything that you said, though.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to keep this for when you get older.
Yeah.
To look back on.
To remind you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you mind if I share something with you?
Sure.
So you have this really cool curiosity that makes you want to understand and know stuff, but you also have this desire to help other people, and especially people that are having a hard time. Like you really have a heart to help them to whatever it is that they're having a hard time with. But it's this compassion that God has put in your heart. Keep protecting that and keep learning and keep growing, because like this dream says, you're going to be helping a lot of people. You are a leader, and God's called you to be a leader, and you're going to help a lot of people. And it has to do with a pastoral calling. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be a pastor in front of a congregation.
I've always wanted to be a pastor.
But it means you're going to care for people, and you're going to help them, and you're going to teach them. And God's going to continue to grow that in you. So that's awesome.
One time at church, I prayed to see what God called for me in my life. And I think I heard him say to be a pastor.
That's pretty cool. I believe that. I think that's awesome.
I want to be a pastor/comedian.
That's perfect.
A funny pastor.
Those are the best ones. Like, you've got to have a good sense of humor to be able to communicate well. It just makes it funner. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming in and sharing your dream. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, you're welcome.
This is awesome.
So fun. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Dreams Guy podcast. We will see you on our next episode. Until then, keep dreaming.